February 20th, 2024. The air inside the courtroom tightened as Judge John Walton prepared to announce a sentence that would echo far beyond Utah's legal system. Ruby Franke, once a well-known YouTuber with a massive following and a polished online image, stood trembling as she waited to hear the punishment for the charges that had shocked millions. She wasn't facing a single moment of judgment. She was facing years of accountability stacked one on top of another, each carrying a potential maximum of 15 years. And what happened next marked a turning point in one of the most disturbing cases tied to online influence and family harm. The crime that led her here was not a misunderstanding or an impulsive act. Her 12-year-old son escaped through a window, bound, starved, and desperate enough to risk his life to survive. The injuries found on his body weren't subtle. They were the kind that left even veteran medical teams shaken. They were the kind that forced prosecutors to confront the darkest side of parental abuse. Her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, faced the same outcome. The judge made sure neither woman would walk away without facing the full consequences of their choices. But here's the truth most people overlook. A long prison sentence isn't mercy. It isn't relief. And it definitely isn't the end of the story. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what Ruby Franke's life behind bars really looks like and why her punishment extends far beyond simple confinement. When Ruby Franke left the courtroom, she didn't walk into silence or relief. She walked into a system that consumes people whole, piece by piece, day after day. From the outside, prison looks like concrete, steel, and procedures, but what Ruby faced was something far more suffocating. Within hours of her sentencing, she was transferred to the Utah State Correctional Facility, a modern compound designed not just to house inmates, but to control every detail of their existence. Nothing about her arrival was ordinary. Officers knew exactly who she was. Her name had been on every screen. Her case had spread online faster than most criminal investigations in recent memory. And that meant her entry into the prison system wasn't just a routine booking. It was a calculated movement designed to manage risk, attention, and the volatility that comes with a high-profile inmate. The facility itself sits just miles from the airport, but the world inside feels nothing like the world outside. It's divided into multiple security wings, each locked behind layers of clearance, cameras, and reinforced doors. Ruby was taken directly to the Dell housing unit, the only part of the compound reserved for women, and even there, she couldn't blend in. The officers processed her, stripped her of her identity, and assigned her a number. Within minutes, the woman who once lived online, who curated her image for millions, became another offender in a space where reputation is currency, and her reputation was already toxic. You have to understand what it means for someone like Ruby to enter a prison environment. Inmate hierarchies aren't based on fame or social following. They're based on the nature of your crime. And crimes involving children sit at the very bottom. In the inmate social order, people convicted of harming kids are not just isolated, they're despised. It doesn't matter if you were wealthy outside. It doesn't matter if you had fans. It doesn't matter if you had a platform. Inside these walls, your past doesn't protect you. It puts a target on your back. For this reason, Ruby was immediately placed under administrative separation. Some call it protective custody. Others call it isolation. But the truth is, it's a form of confinement where the prison decides that your safety depends on keeping you away from the general population. To outsiders, that might sound like extra protection, something gentler, something easier. But ask anyone who has lived in that environment, and they'll tell you the same thing. Protective custody can break you faster than any general housing unit, because the protection comes at a cost, your connection to the world. From the moment Ruby entered her assigned cell, her daily life shrank into rigid routines. She no longer chose when to wake up. Harsh buzzers replaced alarms. Fluorescent lights replaced sunlight. Even the air felt processed, recycled, artificial. Every move she made was monitored by cameras. Every interaction with staff was logged. Every moment she spent outside her cell required approval. And no matter where she walked, she was surrounded by locked doors and echoing silence. Her day starts before dawn. Doors crack open for count, a mandatory process where guards confirm each inmate's presence. Ruby must stand still, silent, and visible while officers verify every number, every body, every space. There's no individuality in this ritual. It's designed to erase personal identity and reinforce the fact that the system owns your time, your movements, your future. For someone who spent years scripting her life online, this loss of autonomy hits harder than anything else. After count, the noise begins. Metal doors slam, voices echo through the unit, guards shout instructions, inmates talk across hallways. It's chaos layered on top of monotony. Ruby exists in the middle of it but never truly part of it. In administrative separation, she's kept at a distance from others. Recreation time, when she gets it, is restricted. No free mingling, no open conversation, no real human connection outside of brief exchanges with officers who are trained to remain detached. This creates a psychological environment that most people underestimate. Humans aren't meant to live without meaningful interaction. They aren't meant to exist in spaces where every sound echoes and every hour blends into the next. Extended separation distorts time. It fractures concentration. It heightens anxiety. And for someone with Ruby's background, someone accustomed to structure, order, and control, the sudden reduction of her world into a cell and a schedule can become overwhelming. But the emotional strain doesn't end there. Ruby doesn't get letters of hope or support. She gets reminders, hundreds of them, letters filled with anger, letters from strangers who followed her case, letters from parents who can't fathom her crimes, each one delivered to her cell as a written mirror of the consequences she created. Every envelope pulls her back to the moment her son escaped. Every message reinforces the reality she cannot escape. And the worst part is there's no logging off, no blocking comments, no shutting down the app. She must read them alone in silence. She also knows the threat that lingers beyond her cell. Even though she's separated, she's not invisible. Inmates talk. News travels fast. High-profile offenders, especially those tied to crimes against children, live with the constant awareness that one slip in security, one moment of miscommunication, one wrong transfer could expose them. That knowledge alone reshapes how a person eats, sleeps, and thinks. Ruby lives in a state of constant vigilance, not because she wants to, but because she has to, and that psychological weight becomes part of the punishment. Everything about Ruby Franke's new life revolves around uncertainty. Not the kind that people experience when they're waiting for test results or hoping for a job offer. This is a deeper uncertainty, a chronic kind, the kind that eats away at a person's sense of direction. Ruby isn't counting down to a clear release date. She's counting years that might stretch into decades. She knows she could be paroled as early as 4 years, but she also knows she could remain inside for 30. And when your future depends entirely on the decisions of a board that doesn't owe you clarity, every day becomes its own psychological battle. For many inmates, structure is a coping mechanism. You map out your time. You cling to routines. You look forward to small privileges. But Ruby lives inside a different structure, one built around restrictions, evaluations, and separation. The absence of certainty affects everything. How she sleeps, how she eats, how she reacts to staff, how she thinks about her future. At any moment, her housing assignment could change. Her privileges could shift. The board's decisions could redefine the next 5 or 10 years of her life. There is no anchor, and she knows it. What makes her situation even heavier is the awareness of her children. While Ruby sits in a confined space, those children are rebuilding their lives. They're working through trauma. They're learning how to trust again. They're relearning what safety feels like. Therapists work with them. Specialists support them. And every step they take away from the harm they experienced becomes another reminder of the damage she caused. Ruby understands this. She knows that even if she lives behind walls, the consequences of her actions continue outside them. She knows she took away childhood moments that can't be replaced. She knows she altered their lives in permanent ways. This is a weight she can't serve time away from. It follows her into every room, every conversation, every hour she spends alone. And then there's the world she used to know, the online world. Ruby once built her identity on curated videos, family branding, and polished public messaging. But that world has turned into a permanent archive of her downfall. Documentaries examine her case. Articles break down every detail. Commentators analyze her behavior. Young people discovering the story for the first time watch clips, read transcripts, and form opinions instantly. Ruby's name resurfaces again and again. Her crimes don't fade, they spread. Inside her cell, she's aware of this. Inmates talk about what they see on television. Guards know the cases they're assigned to. News cycles still bring up her story whenever new details emerge. There is no disappearing, no fading into anonymity. Her past doesn't allow it. She exists in a space where her identity is permanently linked to her actions, and no amount of time served can erase that. But the most difficult part of her punishment is something almost no one sees: the internal replay. Prison takes away distractions, compresses life into long hours of silence. And in that silence, the mind forces you to confront yourself. Ruby isn't just serving time. She's living inside the aftermath of her decisions. She's revisiting choices she made over months, maybe years. These weren't accidents. They weren't lapses. They were patterns. And in prison, patterns replay in the mind whether you want them to or not. Some people question whether Ruby feels remorse, whether she regrets what she did, whether her statements come from guilt or from fear of consequences. But the truth is, remorse doesn't change reality. It doesn't shorten sentences. It doesn't erase trauma. It doesn't rebuild trust. Ruby can say she's sorry every day for the next 30 years, and it won't undo what happened. That's part of the punishment the public rarely understands. Accountability doesn't end at sentencing. It continues through every hour spent remembering. Her life now is defined by long stretches of confinement, constant evaluation, and a future she cannot predict. And the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole holds the authority to shape the rest of her adult life. They will determine whether she gets a chance to re-enter society or whether she will serve decades behind these walls. For Ruby, the difference between 4 years and 30 isn't just time. It's the difference between leaving prison in her 40s or leaving in her 60s. So when people say her sentence ends with a number, they're missing the truth. Ruby's punishment is not a single moment. It is a lifetime of consequences woven into every day she wakes up behind a locked door. It's the knowledge that the world changed without her. It's the silence of separation. It's the uncertainty of the future. It's the weight of her children's healing. It's the reality that fame became infamy and infamy became a cage she cannot escape. This is what accountability looks like when it stretches across years, not moments. When it's lived, not just assigned. When the consequences don't end with a verdict, they begin there. You've seen the reality. You've heard the details of her daily life, the weight she carries, and the consequences she can't escape. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this sentence reflects true accountability for what happened? Do you believe the justice system delivered real justice in this case? And after understanding what her life behind bars actually looks like, has your perspective on long-term incarceration or child-related crimes changed in any way? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because no matter where you stand, one thing is clear: Ruby Franke isn't walking away from this. She'll spend years in confinement, years in isolation, and years facing the truth of what she did. Her old life is gone. Her public image is gone. And every day that passes inside that cell is another reminder of the choices that led her here. This is what long-lasting consequences truly look like.